information beforehand. My name is Hans. I'll give you a little overview first and then start my presentation. As I said, my name is Hans, working for a marketing project with LCP Science, specifically in the STM Journals division. Basically covering all science areas, but really focusing on journal and article metrics. So not just article metrics, also journal metrics. And authors are a very important audience in that case. We're very much involved with them. The key thing for me is really the passion for bridging communication gaps. And I think that's a role that Altmetrics also can take here. I mean, Altmetrics is a real new development that can bridge that gap between non-scientists and scientists, between alphas and betas, and even like our ancestors tried to do in the past with getting communications across to animals with this horse known in the 1907 experiment. There's a lot to do in science communication. Altmetrics, I think, in essence, are a good way of doing science communications, and that's something we all can do a lot more than we've done so far. So a few observations. What I do think is that scientists spend a lot of time on their article, and basically hardly any on the rest of it. They don't want to spend time on marketing. They don't want to spend time on promoting their article anymore. If it's been published, that's basically it. I think good science is not good enough. There's really a battle going on for attention. I mean, there's a lot of information. Yesterday we heard Mr. Farrar kicking off the day saying, isn't there overburden coming up already? So it's a little bit finding the balance between a lot of information and finding it and filtering it through tools like Altmetrics. Funding bodies, we've seen it yesterday, are more and more demanding. They want to see the societal impact of research. How can you prove that? More and more you see also, and I think especially in the Netherlands I've seen a couple of examples for that, universities building up marketing and communications departments. I mean, initially they never thought that would be their role, but it's really something coming up. They're building up these departments with a goal. And there we are. Publishers and marketers can help in this area. There's really a role for publishers and marketers to play here. And if we don't play it, Ewan can always help you out. So what role do Altmetrics play? I see it that it's the buzz right now. Scientists want to be part of it. They want to know what's going on, what article hits the news, and how can I be part of that? Altmetrics create great insights in networks. I mean, if you go into the details of a detailed page, for example, on altmetric.com or an impact story, you do see a great number of people tweeting about your work. Who are they connected to? Where are they from? All these kinds of interesting network data are there one mouse click away, basically. And it's just a new angle to impact. It's not better. It's not the only way looking at impact, but it's really a new way looking at impact. And I think we need to treat it that way. The reach beyond academia is clear, but will it also change science? I mean, we heard these examples the day before yesterday at the Hack Day. Are scientists going to change the titles of their articles without a question mark? Is that better? Should they do different things? Is that really changing science, or is it just a side effect? But also, I think, can confuse people. I mean, I've had a lot of feedback over the last couple of months while we implemented Altmetric services around our articles, and not everybody is positive about it. I mean, there's also people really saying, what is this? I don't understand it. Please explain. So I really think publishers can play a role here. And what can we do? What can we do with Altmetrics? I think essentially it's really helping scientists to promote their work. Because that's something, I said it before, they don't like to do as easily. Maybe they have to do, but we really need to help them there. And it's, I mean, the core role of a publisher historically, and I think should ever be, is advancing science by listening to them, by collaborating, explaining things, and also educating systems like this, tools to work with science, and again, bridge these communication gaps. And it's not just between alphas and betas, it's really early career scientists versus, let's say, older scientists, clinical versus basic science. There's a lot of silos going on in science that need to be bridged, and I think, again, Altmetrics is a great tool in achieving that. We need to support sharing. I mean, simply by sharing with one click to Twitter, to Mendeley, all kinds of repositories, that brings your article out in the open. Don't keep it in the dark. We can really help you in getting it out. And again, this holistic approach to metrics, that's important. I mean, there's different situations where you use different metrics. I mean, a journal metric can be very helpful if you're just orienting on what's an interesting journal for me. What is the situation around that journal? And after you've published your article, you're much more interested in this article level, because that's really talking about you, talking about your article, and that's really what you're interested at that moment in time. I think really great science deserves great visibility, and that's not always the case. So we need to help in visualizing that. Visualizing numbers, visualizing great science is, I think, a great tool to get the message across. And again, the link to journal metrics is still important. So what did we do at Elsevier? Basically pilots. Pilots are a very important tool for us to get things going. Because if you start with great plans, take months to do it, it doesn't work. You should take a small group of people, very enthusiastic, very engaged, and go for it. And just try things out. Don't worry about making failures, and see what happens. And that's what we've done. We piloted in different platforms: Science Direct, Scopus. We have a specific platform for journal homepages, which is more of a catalog for journals. And we did a lot of campaigns. I'll show you a few in a minute. And really, engaging here in conferences and discussions is an important way of hearing and feeling and what's going on in science. What's important to scientists, where publishers can help them with. My colleague Chinmay was the guy who did the pilot on Science Direct. Just a few journals, 27, mainly in the medical area. He was testing the donut versus a brick display, because, I mean, the donut everybody knows from altmetric.com. Is that the only way displaying it? Is that the only visualization? Is that the most important one? Well, we found out that it's not really making a big difference in clicks, for example. I mean, clicks are not the holy grail, but it's at least a measure of seeing what effect the one visual has against the other. I think Martin yesterday tweeted, "Where's Habib?" Well, here he is, virtually with us. Michael Habib is the product manager for Scopus. For the people who don't know what Scopus is, am I still there? Oh, no, well, it's a database, abstracts and well, articles and all this information. But Michael is really an evangelist. He's basically going to every Altmetrics conference, and he's been there from the start. I mean, when Ewan won the Elsevier Grand Challenge in 2011, I think Michael was there, and he was one of the first to adopt the concept of Altmetrics at that time already. And he implemented it without any official contract or whatever. He just went for it, and I think that's a real nice approach. I took care of Altmetrics on journal homepages. I mean, you see this display. It's already bridging a bit of this gap between the article level and the journal level, because a lot of people, let's say, initially go to Google, put in a few keywords, and land on the journal homepage. So that's the first point of contact for a lot of people to see what's going on. And one way of showing what's going on with a journal is showing what's going on with their articles. And again, this is just one option you could see, that a hit parade can make Altmetric also a bit more sexy in a way. Because it's not just about numbers. It's also a bit like, how can we make sure that people start to like it, start to try it, start to find out what it's really about, and start clicking things. Some statistics. Generally, what I already said, it's not a lot of extra traffic. You shouldn't do it for traffic generation as a publisher. You really should do it as adding quality to the science information. It's really about quality and not about quantity here. An interesting pattern I found when we did some of these campaigns was, if you have the full text article next to a donut, I would assume a lot of people would click the donut, and well, at least 50% of them. But interestingly enough, consistently 86% is clicking the article and only 14% the visualization. What does that mean? I'm not sure yet. Campaigns we did, I think also within a publishing company, it's important to bridge a gap between marketing people and, let's say, the more beta-oriented side of the business. And the Altmetric Explorer tool, for example, this analysis tool, is a great way of getting the more alpha people to know what they can do with it. So what information is out there? What can they see on a journal level for all publishers, for all journals? And how can they use this in bringing this communication across? We've done a few things, and I think some of them are pretty creative. Virtual special issues, for example. There was an International Archaeology Day coming up, and the person working in the archaeology field said, hey, let's make a selection based on Altmetrics, where we basically make a top 10 or a top 5 selection of articles and display them in this listing, showing that archaeology is also a sexy field where a lot of things are happening. We do it with emailings, where you, again, see this visualization next to articles. Publishers are using the information from the analysis tools in their editorial board meetings just to educate and make the editorial board enthusiastic about the concept of Altmetrics, because it's still not that well known. I mean, everybody here knows what Altmetrics is, or at least the concept of article level metrics, but it's not like 80% of the scientists is aware of that. It's still a lot of work to do to make them at least aware, and let alone let them play with it and let them use it. 1 minute. I'll start to go to my finish. Mendeley, we've talked a lot about it already. We more and more bring that into the light. We're integrating it more in our Altmetric displays. We're bannering about it. And also in our sharing options. I mean, one of the easiest way of sharing your information is with one click of this sharing option buttons. Some statistics, really quickly. We've done a big mailing out in December, just the first trial. I think the open and click-based rates were very good, but at one point we realized that a lot of information for a lot of journals is so small that you see scores of 1 that doesn't make sense to display. So we decided to put in a threshold to be a bit more selective on what we are displaying, because it doesn't make sense to send out a message for a journal where you say, okay, this is a hit parade and the best scoring article has a score of 1. Wow. I mean, that doesn't work. Feedback. Generally, people are very positive about it. They really feel there's something in it for them, but they're also critical on usefulness. Societies are starting to demand it. I mean, we need to see it. We do want it as part of a contract or whatever. but also beware of controversial articles, because we talked about it yesterday. Sentiment is not really taken care of yet. I mean, a very negative article can end up high in a hit parade, and before you know it, you're promoting a very bad or very controversial article. Feedback from individuals, I mean, it ranges from what you see on the top, very useful, to what you see at the end, really unclear, I don't understand it, what criteria are you using? Some takeaways from this, I think generally we should be very receptive to talk to people who take at least the effort to contact you. I mean, if they want to talk about Altmetrics, explain it. Try to make them enthusiastic. Be creative. I talked about this virtual special issue. A buzz competition. Prizes. I mean, prizes, our PLOS friends were talking about it yesterday. Prizes are a way to make it a bit more sexy in a way, a bit more attractive to deal with Altmetrics. And that's just another way of getting Altmetrics out in the open, making people aware of it. And again, also be creative in things like remarkable articles or personal Altmetrics. Final one. What's next? We will roll out across our different platforms. More integration will be there with usage and citations. And we'll be testing alternative displays. The buckets you heard about yesterday by my colleague Liza College are going to be tested. Is that going to be working? Is it not going to be working? And we obviously keep listening. And again, as a closing statement, I think we really all should make big data small and try to visualize as much as possible, because that really makes this bridge happening. Thank you very much. One final tribute to the two Che Guevaras of Altmetrics, Ewan and Mike Taylor. I'm not sure he's in yet. He's coming by bike, so probably some traffic jam coming up. I had these T-shirts made. The mic is obviously for you. And your own one for Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans. I think we'll press on without any questions, friends, but I'm sure you'll be able to find in at the coffee break if there's anything you want to explore later. Next, slight surprise from the schedule I have here, but will be Jennifer Lynn from PLOS.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Lynn. Welcome to those of you who weren't able to make it yesterday. I will make a couple of references to some of the conversations we've had yesterday. So if you do get a chance and you had missed all of yesterday's really great proceedings, do check that out. I think that's available online already, Kat, is that right? Yes, already. So my name is Jennifer Lynn. I'm from PLOS. We're an open access publisher. And I just want to share a little bit with you today about what we've been doing. So as you know, I mentioned yesterday, not only are we in fact building out the system that we originally set up back in 2009 as a pioneer of article metrics and Altmetrics as a publisher, and henceforth really working on it to scale it up from a cottage industry to hopefully what will be in the future an entire ecosystem that is the groundworks or part of the larger groundwork for scholarly communications infrastructure. I want to reference this quote by Albert Einstein: "Not everything that can be counted counts, not everything that counts can be counted." We do take this very, very seriously, especially being one of the first organizations to really start thinking about what these metrics are, what are appropriate uses of these metrics. Sometimes those discussions can actually be quite colorful, violent even per se. I do count myself to be very privileged and fortunate to be usually on the side of Martin Fenner, but in the events that it doesn't happen, it's not pretty. One of the things also that is part of what I want to share is that it's actually really, really hard to do this. Building the system itself, where we thankfully have Martin Fenner and a whole host of other very solid and strong engineers and visionaries in this area, but also the work which I would say follows behind is to deepen the ways in which we use it across our publishing organization. Of course, you can't do anything with the metrics until you have them. So a lot of the work that we have done now and that we plan on rolling out in the near to midterm future, I'd like to take a little bit of time and share with you. This will be a dizzying array of very different random images. So I just want to set you up, also in part because I have tables, and tables are really never really that interesting. So the most obvious place to start is the expression of it on our open access articles, the front end. Pretty obvious, authors want to see the reach of their article, so we display each of the metrics on the metrics tab. Researchers want to find the relevant papers. So as much as possible at this point in time, we've been integrating it into our search mechanisms or our display mechanisms, such as on the homepage, etc. In recognition of the fact that by and large researchers do not go to a single journal's search engine to discover relevant papers for them, we really seek to collaborate with other parties, the places where researchers do go, in fact. And we think that that is ultimately going to be one of the very linchpins of ALMs or Altmetrics, when those are readily made available in those spaces. Navigating through the literature, this is exactly what I'm talking about. We have these signposts to help users situate themselves when they're on an article. We'll be launching a new visualization of this kind in the next, hopefully before the end of the year or early next year. The back end, you thought I was going to share a different picture, didn't you? Sorry. In the back end, we have built a CMS tool that makes it far easier for many of our editorial staff, as in-house and externally, to very quickly and easily transfer the curation content, the editorial information enrichment that they provide directly to our home pages, and hopefully soon across the entire journal site. So we'll be using that, working on it right now. We're also partnering with Eigenfactor Recommends, that service led by Devin West, fantastic technology that surfaces articles based upon a citation graph. We'll be applying some of the ALMs in our second iteration of our Eigenfactor Recommends for article recommendations. So as I mentioned yesterday, you'll see the slide again. It's all about piping, not just in the context of the entire scholarly enterprise, the communications ecosystem, but in-house, right? It's the groundwork for all of these very different pieces, not just the front end, not just the back end, but across editorial, publication services, and marketing. For editorial, we're using it already to help enhance our curation work, for promotion opportunities, to track dissemination of articles published. It'll give us a view into the type of channels that have potential, the rate of growth amongst many of the different subject areas. For our publication services, it supports our external editors. It provides data and content behind the metrics on the downstream impact of the publications, such as media coverage, blog coverage, etc. Just to keep in mind, and I think it has been the assumption that behind a lot of the conversations today, as well as yesterday, when we talk about Altmetrics, we're certainly talking about the number itself, because the numbers, the raw data rolled up, enriched, etc., they enable us to do far greater things. But the numbers, what happens behind the numbers, is also part and parcel of what Altmetrics and ALMs really are. So surfacing that up, perhaps from our standpoint, and our workflow, we get the numbers first, and then we dig deeper into the things that happen behind it. Marketing can attract authors. We also have email campaigns that are set up to go notify authors, as well as other users who have signed up for notifications for newly published papers, what's being read, etc. One of the cool new things that we've recently started, it's going to be in fact a monthly series or possibly quarterly series, is something we call the +1 highlights, and it's essentially using ALMs to surface some of the top papers. And by top, this is a very highly contestable term. We don't really like to say top 10, etc., because there's there are very many use cases for what top means for each person. But what we've been doing is calculating a ratio of PDF downloads to HTML ratios, HTML page views. What we do is we take papers that were published within the last 4 calendar months, and we calculate this and then surface the top view. It gives us a very interesting view as to what users across the globe, across all of the subject areas that we publish in for PLOS One, are really looking at. And when we have this list, month by month, we can continue to track them, see what's happening to them as they age. As 4 months becomes a year becomes 2 years, the citations, which generally lag, come rolling in. This is just a very simple snapshot of the actual posting. I do encourage you to go online to PLOS One's blog called Everyone to go check out the very first one that we did. There should be, as I mentioned, it's recurring, so there will be more coming down the line. And with the tracking of these papers, we can continue to visualize these top 10s, applying things in-house, such as our taxonomy or subject area thesaurus, and begin to see the different areas, the hot areas where people have expressed more interest in. The great thing about ALMs is you can essentially mash up any other additional type of metadata. And this is in part why we say and continue to say that the possibilities for its use are absolutely endless, and we've only begun to scratch the surface. Another really cool editorial editorial effort that is also underway is what we call the Alm Article Feature. It's a series that not only highlights individual articles based on a per journal view, but it also celebrates in the end what is a core editorial functions of journals, which is to curate content that matters to their wider audiences. Each one of these articles were selected by our in-house as well as external editorial staff. And what they did was they took each of the articles and they dove in to the ALMs, surfaced all the stories behind them, and they found out actually quite a lot of interesting things that maybe never would have come to light were it not for at least the beginning view of the numbers and at first glance. For one, the article here about prescription testosterone, the reception from the wider audience. One of the things that was quite interesting and provocative as through the story was that public viewing of science does matter. That might resonate to many of the funders, especially those who spoke yesterday. There are also very interesting stories across each one of these journals, journal article features. I do encourage you to go look it up. We have a wrapper that lists all of the newly published article features. That's on the PLOS Tech blog. This is a picture of the sauropod gigantism. Sauropod dinosaurs were the largest terrestrial animals to roam the Earth. If you want to know more about it, we have a PLOS collection of articles all about the genetic evolution of this particular species. And ALMs, in fact, play a large part in running this collection. It's an ongoing series. Just another example of its use at PLOS. One of the things that I think that many publishers do end up, it's a perennial question which existed before ALMs, will continue to exist even with it, is what are we in fact publishing? The bibliometrics work, little that we've done between Martin and I in partnership with other groups outside the experts like Mike Thelwell yesterday, as well as a whole host of other new labs that are really beginning to start using our data and running numbers on it, beginning to explore, what are the correlations between them? What are the best? What does it actually mean when you have a tweet or, a new article saved into your reference library or shared, on Wikipedia, etc. You begin to get a lot of very interesting views of what it is that you're actually publishing. So I think this is a really strong component of what we're doing with ALMs at PLOS, and something that we definitely want to invest more in the future in collaboration with the bibliometricians out there. Moving on, what do we want as a publisher? As I mentioned, all of this work is underway, but a lot of this can't, in fact, be fully, completely realized until we have a number of things. One of them being structured metadata for the cleanest results. We've been working with Wellcome Trust for more than a year, in fact, with showcasing some of the articles that their funded researchers have been publishing in our journals. And something that we knew, that the very initial feedback that they gave us, which is important, is we can't, run the cleanest reports until we know which articles were in fact published by Wellcome Trust funded researchers. So we need FundRef for that. We need ORCIDs to identify authors and disambiguate them. And the same go for institutions with, say, Ringgold. So structured metadata is really something that we want that will support our efforts. Another thing is, does anybody know what this little image looks like? I know it's kind of tiny, but this is a metaphor for what a raw count, say the total page views and downloads for a PLOS article is. We get a very small view. If you look at it within the broader set of other ALMs that, in fact, the article is getting, you might get a bigger view. But what we want to know is what is actually going on. This little thing is just a smokestack on a bigger boat, right? The boat might be in the Atlantic, it might be on the opposite side of the world. Context does matter, especially when this smokestack is on this boat. Context really matters. We need this raw data, but we also need this raw data to have context and in order to really get meaning behind it. And so I don't think this can be done with us as a single publisher. We're never going to, we can't do it alone. Obviously, we've never envisioned it, and we've never acted on it based on this premise. That's just not in PLOS's DNA. So coordination between other publishers, whether it's technology etiquette for publishers so that data is available and easily consumed, what we call data stewardship. A basic degree of coordination when it comes to how we're aggregating, how we're displaying, etc. All of these things are really, really critical. But at the end of the day, we can't really create that context unless we have open data that's accessible for all of us. And I think we'll hear a little bit more about this, I think, in the next session, as well as perhaps throughout the rest of the day, about how critical it is to start laying the pipes, as I mentioned, for this infrastructure of the future. Just to wrap up, one quick thing is that we are reissuing a call for papers in the PLOS collection of Altmetrics. We launched back in 2012 with an aim to provide this forum for the dissemination of innovative research on metrics. So I do encourage you, if you have been doing some work, write it up, and please submit it to the PLOS collection for Altmetrics. Thank you.
Time for one question for Jennifer before I Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Next up, we have Martin Rolands from Springer Science and Business Media. Are you able to do this?
I think I can handle that. It's becoming more interesting by the minute, gosh. Springer Green, yes, they sabotaged us, didn't they? The two publishers with orange in the logo. Anyway, so I want to talk about article level metrics. Here's a quick outline of my talk. It's far up there. Okay. So I want to say a few words about the importance of article level metrics to us, what we do as Springer, our ALM team, and also a few slides on what our friends from Papers do with article level metrics. So why do we talk, instead of what was mentioned most of yesterday, Altmetrics, why do we talk about article level metrics? Well, we are in the long tail of publishing, and I think for our authors it's important to know, how many citations does our article have? Because I think it's a valid question. Which article made a bigger contribution? Is it the article in one of the top-tier journals with 0 citations, and they do exist, or one of the low-impact journals with tens or sometimes hundreds of citations? And actually, similarly, you can ask the same question. Which article made a bigger impact, an article with many citations, or maybe an article widely discussed on the social web? Or is it an article with many downloads, or an article discussed on CNN? I will not make any judgment which one is more important. I think we should provide all possible metrics and leave it up to the reader or the evaluation committee which one is actually important to them. Just to give you an example that sometimes citations also don't matter too much. Here's the top downloaded articles from our Springer Plus journal. And you can see it has 60,000 downloads, even though it has no impact factor yet. And I think at that time it wasn't in PubMed. So even though you don't have these, which are considered sort of the ground rules for publishing, people do find the content and they do download the data when it's interesting. And it's also being picked up. So here are a number of, sorry for the donuts, I think there's a bit of a donut overkill, but a few examples. For example, the top one appeared in Melbourne in a newspaper. The second one in El País. Scientific American blogged about an article in Springer Plus, and also Lifehacker wrote something about a Springer Plus article. So how can article levels being used? I think it's a very useful tool to filter research for relevance, impact, and quality. It will give an alternative for the impact factor, although I think the impact factor will remain to exist, and I'll spend a few words on journal metrics later. But it will also help us to understand how the research findings are disseminated and discovered. And I think going forward we should maybe broaden the scope from only article level metrics and basically any type of metrics, whether that is journal metrics or chapter level metrics or book level metrics, data level metrics. Yesterday in the breakout session we discovered that actually person level metrics might be another alternative, and well, any other kind of level metrics. And as long as you provide as many metrics as possible, I think it's up to the reader or the evaluator or the author to decide which one he thinks is valuable. Okay, so what do we do? Here's a sample article on Springer Link. We have the citations listed on the abstract trace and the shares that will link out to our platform citations.springer.com, which is based on Crossref data. It will show you where the citations are, and if the content is within Springer, you can also see the in-text place where the citation is. The other link will go to the Altmetric article page, where you can see a breakdown of where your article is being shared. Similar to the previous speakers, we also take this information to our editorial board meetings. So we show the editorials, the editors-in-chief and the editorial board, that there's also something else than the impact factor. We show them the top downloaded, top cited, and the top Altmetric articles in our meetings. The editorial staff and marketing has access to the Altmetric Explorer, which has been mentioned earlier, I think. And so we use that to first to monitor our own journals to see what's being said about the journals, and if needed to take action, and give some kudos back to the people who mentioned some articles that are published in our journals. We also started to use the article level metrics in marketing campaigns to highlight top cited and top shared and top downloaded articles. Here's well, they look wonderful with this color scheme. There's two of them that I would like to highlight. It's the Neurostars and the Week of Citations. So the Neurostars campaign was launched in 2012. I think it's one of the first. And we showed the articles that were most cited, most downloaded, and most shared from Springer in the discipline of neuroscience. So the journal where it was published didn't matter. We just took all of the Springer neuroscience portfolio and then draw up a list of the top cited, downloaded, and shared articles. And we did a little countdown in the last week of December. And it was very well received. We continued that this year also in conjunction with the Brain Awareness Week. And now we expanded that to our quarterly Neurostars list. So if you go to www.springer.com/Neurostars, you can see each quarter the most shared articles of our entire discipline. So also stepping away from the article, from the journal, and focusing only on the article. The second example is diversity in citation metrics, to raise awareness that, basically, an often heard question is, how many citations do you have for your article? Well, I have 20 citations. Yes, that depends a lot on where your citations are. And so just before the impact factor, we had this campaign running, and maybe a little bit teasing Thomson Reuters. I cannot ignore that, deny that. And so again, we showed the high top cited articles, but we also did some calculation, and from the same set of articles in a certain journal, doesn't matter too much, we looked at a number of citations on the different platforms. As you can see, and I think that was also shown yesterday by the Wellcome Trust, a similar exercise, you can see the differences between the platforms are quite big. If you say you have 20 citations, and that might well be true if you refer to PubMed, but Google Scholar is a fourfold higher. So, our friends from Biomed Central also wrote a very nice blog that I can recommend reading, breaking down some of the information that's behind it. Okay, moving on. We also inform the authors and the editors about ALM with some information on our website, in newsletters, etc. And to further power that within Springer, we introduced an article level metrics virtual team with people really from all parts of the company to get this, take this really serious as a company. So there's people from editorial, marketing, Biomed Central, Springer. Actually, I forgot one, which is papers. I don't know what's this. There's a thing somewhere. And we will further explore other possibilities to do with article level metrics. Okay, last part is about what our friends from Papers have been doing. They also do work with article level metrics. For those who don't know Papers, Papers is a reference manager tool that is available for many different platforms, and recently they also launched an online version of their application, which should work on all platforms. Now, I think the cool thing here is they established a partnership with Altmetrics, the company. And now what you can see here is that you basically you can take your Twitter handle, or basically anybody's Twitter handle, and put it in your Papers application, and then it will bring up the articles that are being discussed amongst your followers and friends. So rather than going to Twitter and seeing what's being said and scrolling all the way up and down your Twitter application, it will bring you here ready to go the articles that are being discussed in your network. Similar, you can do that also for a journal that you like. In this case, it's the Cerebellum, and you can see these are the latest articles being or the articles that are being discussed on in the social web on the Cerebellum. Okay, some conclusions and a little outlook. I think article level metrics are a more accurate way of evaluating scholarly performance. They show the dissemination of an article to scholarly and non-scholarly communication. And I think they should be a new benchmark for employers, funders, and collaborators. And last, they provide filters also to find the most relevant work. We, from our side, do our best to also educate everybody and make them aware that they exist in the broadest possible way. Getting back to the journal metrics, this is something we will be rolling out in the next couple of months to really show also on the journal level all possible metrics that are available on spring.com. I guess that's the timer. And so you can decide for yourself whether you're looking for a journal that has a high impact factor or has a quick turnaround time or has many happy authors. That's all I had.
Great. We have time for a question or any. Someone over there?
From the Science Policy Research Unit at the University of Sussex. There's been a lot of talk of paper level metrics versus journal level metrics. And I fully agree that it is an improvement. But I'm also worried that thinking that science only develops through papers. And I assume that the funders are actually interested in contributions of grants, not as papers, but as contributions to knowledge. I can think of trying to understand the growth, the scientific growth in careers, not as papers, but as building up the knowledge of a researcher. So I think we're still missing a point, which is how do we aggregate those article level metrics into socially meaningful development? And I wonder whether there have been any developments along these lines.
Well, I think that's sort of the if I understood correctly, whether that it's not all about articles, but also about the impact of the person on the scientific community. Is that more or less cutting a few corners?
To knowledge, either
right.
In teams, in grants, in training.
Yeah, I think there's two. Well, I guess ORCID will be very important there, because there you find your fund information, you'll find your article information and any other information. And the other side, I think, will be some sort of a personal level metrics, where you bring together all the information around a person and the impact that his work had on the scientific community. And I hope that will be something anytime soon.
I think we have a session later today about outside the article, looking at other research outputs, and I think that session should address those points a bit more, I think. So, thank you again.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, the last speaker today isn't, as you might have noticed from the plan, Ruth from Eli. We have instead Ian Mulvaney, who's head of technology.
Hi, I run technology at Eli. My goal here is to run through these slides pretty quickly while not dying. I'm going to give a very concrete example of some of the issues and challenges that we encountered when we tried to implement ALMs. So this is really more of a grounded talk rather than a conceptual talk. So eLife is a new journal. Here's a little blurb about us. The thing I'm going to focus on here is that part of our mission is to look at how to maximize the reach and influence of new research and to showcase new approaches for the presentation and assessment of research. So from the get-go, we knew that article-level metrics and altmetrics needed to be important. That's kind of the timeline. It was announced in June 2011, and we were tasked to get the journal launched by the end of 2012. I joined in May of 2012 as the only technical/platform staff person, and we had to get that thing built by the end of 2012. So that's what it looked like when I joined. This is a little bit like what I felt with the task. And we launched the platform on the 13th of December 2012. So tears of joy. But we had to make some very pragmatic decisions about how we were going to implement article-level metrics. So we have this nice way of getting into them. On the article page, it's this tab. You land on a page. You get these kind of metrics. But the way they get delivered to the reader is, so I wanted to just talk about the fact that from this quote by Mark Andreessen, he says, software is eating the world. And the counterpoint to that is that software is kind of buggy, and there are lots of bugs in software, and it's an intrinsically, irreducibly complicated thing to do. And actually, I'm astonished by the idea that so much of our world economy is handcrafted by people in basements. It's the only major industry which is still like a handcrafted industry. And I want to talk about kind of two problems that we've encountered. Not problems, but things that kind of we learned through the process of implementing ALMs. And the first is the black box problem. So when we show you our ALMs and you land on that page, we don't have them stored magically somewhere on our web servers. We just call out to these other providers who provide the data as the page is loaded. And so we have our platform host who gives us our usage data. And when we launched, we worked with a company called Impact Story to give us our alt data, if you like. But having this provider give you that data as your page is loaded, one of the problems is they're a black box. And in December of 2013, Impact Story told us that they were going to pivot their business and no longer supply this data to publishers. And so we no longer had access to that data. So that was a bit of a challenge. So what we decided we needed to do was move away from that kind of black box scenario. Let me just add. And we move away from this kind of black box scenario, and we implemented our own local version of the PLOS ALM app so that we had that data to hand locally. Sorry, Legato, thanks. Yeah, I only found out that name yesterday. I'm not up to date. Okay, let's see what the next slide is. Okay, so I started off saying that we had this kind of scenario, and that Impact Story was kind of a black box. But it gets a bit worse, because it turns out that our platform host is also kind of a black box. And we were kind of one of the very first publishers that they worked with to try and deliver per article usage data. So we were a bit of like a canary in the coal mine. We were really working on very work in progress kind of APIs. And an example of, so this guy's meant to be yellow, by the way. This is meant to be a canary. And one of the consequences was 12 months after we launched the platform, we noticed that our usage metrics were starting to evaporate, and usage metrics on our articles were starting to go down. And we're like, what's going on? This is crazy. And we dug in, and we found that we had an API call, which was, the API call was basically, give me all the usage of this article. But the way it was implemented was, give me all the usage of this article for the last 12 months. And so we had to rectify that. And this was something, these were kinds of issues we encountered. Yeah, we fixed that, by the way. We did fix that. So the kind of direction I would like us to move towards is, instead of having even those usage data being provided by a black box provider, I'd like to just find a way to aggregate that into our own local data store and data warehouse. And actually, I think the talk that Jennifer showed gives you an example of the kind of stuff you can start to do an experiment with if you have local copies of that data. And we're not there yet, but this is the direction we'd like to go to. And we'd like to take that usage data from our platform host, or from Google Analytics, or from other providers. Okay, so I've often been asked why we didn't work with Altmetric, for example. There isn't any particular reason why we haven't worked with Altmetric yet. That's just a prioritization list, but I could easily imagine us connecting to the Altmetric data source in a similar kind of fashion, and I hope we can get there at some point. The second kind of thing I want to talk about is what I'm going to call the intelligent design issue around how you present Altmetrics. So when we launched, we were told, of course, we're going to implement the view on the metrics just like PLOS, because since PLOS do it this way, that is the standard, and we need to get to standardization in how things are presented. And if you talk to anyone from PLOS, they think that was crazy. And so we fought really hard against the idea that we should just show things the same way, because we knew that that was just a first attempt to try and show these kind of usage data. So we didn't want to do that. So this is like the PLOS way of showing that data. And our first attempt was, one of the things that's really important for us was not to show a cumulative graph. We wanted to show pair time bucket events so that if there was a spiky event in readership, that would leap out at you. And we also wanted to show different types of usage data in relation to each other, so you could see if you could identify some kinds of correlations. And again, in December of 2013, at the ALM workshop in San Francisco, this guy, Juan Pablo Alperin, kind of popped up with a presentation where he just brutally criticized all of the ways that people were presenting this data. And his thing with ours was like, really? You really want to do a comparison there? That just makes no sense, because you just can't, the scaling is totally off. I was like, yeah, you got a point. And he, in that talk, he gave this thing that he had hacked together, where you could take two different kinds of usage data, but you would scale them. So the vertical numbers are not the same, but they are scaled so that you can eyeball whether there's a correlation. We thought, okay, this is really good. Let's use that. And he wrote that. He presented the code. The code was made openly available. And we thought, okay, we're going to use that code. But he had written that code just as a demonstration for a talk. And we found that there were some issues with the code that we had to overcome when we got to using it. And we did. We worked through those issues, and we've contributed back to the repository that code lives in. And so we've now implemented that kind of view on our article level metrics pages. So this is the kind of situation we're in today. I do hope we can get the platform host data running through some kind of central data warehouse that we have control over. But if I just focus in on how our PLOS ALM app works, currently, it's going out and querying these external sources, and it does that on a scheduled basis. The stuff that Mark Patterson, my colleague, was talking about yesterday, the DOI event tracker, when that comes online, we'll be able to just plug that straight into our own local instance. So we're quite excited about that, and it will mean that that should be an even more robust way of getting that data into our platform. So the kinds of things we've learned just so far, by actually implementing the PLOS app, I think we've helped improve the deployment scripts for the PLOS ALM tool. I think having a completely independent body try to implement that has made that piece of software better. I think we've significantly improved the code for visualization that we encountered, and we've worked with Juan, we've worked with Martin on that. We now have our own local repository of data to experiment with. We haven't done much of that experimentation yet, but it's right there. We will be releasing an ALM module into the Drupal community, so if any other publisher is running on Drupal and they have an ALM app, that module will connect those two things very quickly, and when DET is released, we'll be able to tap directly into that. And I think so far, with our experiences with the PLOS ALM tool and with Impact Story, we're the only publisher to have integrated two major altmetric providers, so hopefully we can extend that and work with other people as well, and thank you.
I'd like to thank Eve for standing in and putting together that great presentation in such quick time. He was working feverishly on it yesterday, and also for bringing us back on schedule. But to blow that, if anybody does have any questions for Ian. No. Okay. Thank you. He will be around the rest of the day. Right. Now to hand over to you and Adi, who's had quite a few mentions already today, who'll be leading the next session.
So it's not like
no, sorry, I just need to sit.
Oh, those.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So on our next session, when we're